Good morning on this Sunday, February 5th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. As we were first to report, DeKalb County and the city of Atlanta reach a compromise to move the police and fire training facility forward. Also, high-profile Southern Democrats are urging party leaders to pick Atlanta as host for the next Democratic National Convention. And an upset in the election to replace the late House Speaker David Ralston in North Georgia. Melita, Phil, Theron, and Martha are all here. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
As we reported here on the Georgia Gang, Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens and DeKalb CEO Michael Thurman announced an agreement to ensure the planned Atlanta Public Safety Training Center will move forward.
We will protect the neighborhoods, the families, the individuals, and most importantly, we will protect the South River Forest Basin.
DeKalb CEO Michael Thurman and Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens made it clear this was an agreement that took all sides into account, allowing for construction to begin on the controversial Atlanta Police Training Facility. Protesters outside Atlanta City Hall this week were skeptical.
Another training facility that is highly militarized with weaponry that could annihilate a city in a protest. For black and brown bodies.
The misinformation has gone far enough.
Mayor Dickens says the deal will protect the environment. The center will include an obstacle course for emergency vehicles, also housing for police and fire recruits. The development will also include 300 acres of parkland.
Our development partner has committed to replace any hardwood tree that will be destroyed in construction with 100 hardwood trees for each one.
Mayor Dickens wanted to emphasize this facility will not be built over a forest and that the training facility will actually sit on land that has long been cleared of hardwood trees. Martha, I'll start with you this week. Just want to get your thoughts, since you weren't here last week, on how this all played out and lessons learned.
Well, and I had the opportunity this week to talk with both Michael Thurman and Mayor Dickens on my program. And look, I think this is the right step to do. We said we needed better police training. This is going to provide that. It's also going to protect the long-term area around that. So I think it's a win for everybody around. And looking long-term, this could be the kind of facility that other police forces around the state could use and be able to have really well-trained police officers. And that's what we all want.
Theron.
Well, I think the thing that was really important is that this project has been going on for a while, but once you saw DeKalb County and the city of Atlanta come together to talk, the Atlanta Police Foundation played a role. It was also this multi-jurisdictional approach that's been going on for a while here, is that what they wanted to make clear is that, yes, the Atlanta training facility will move forward, but more importantly, you want to protect the residents, protect the forest, but also make sure that this is only just a first step moving towards process. You still have to get the permit, the land disturbance permit from the county, and now you have to continue to communicate with the public and the residents on how you're going to build this facility. But I think ultimately, good government, and I think DeKalb and Atlanta was a big winner on this one.
Phil, you were critical because it took so long.
Well, I was, but hallelujah that you broke the news and that they did come to get the permit from Michael Thurman. I don't know why Michael Thurman took so long, and I talked to everybody involved in this, and perhaps we could have done this months ago, because why? It just played into the hands of the radicals who don't want this police facility. So I want to praise Mayor Dickens especially. He stuck with the police training center. This is going to be a great center. I think it could be something that will draw law enforcement people here from around the Southeast. I think it shows support for our men in blue and women in blue here in Atlanta that have been under siege. And so I think everybody ought to be delighted with what's happened.
Melita, it was interesting because Mayor Dickens admitted the communication on this issue was not what it should have been. And that is something that you pointed out weeks ago.
That is true. There's been a lot of energy around these protests, and I hope that the environmentalists will direct their energy to some of the other critical parts of the overall South River Forest development plan. I hope they'll hold the city to the same sort of standards they're giving for this police facility about replacing hardwoods with additional trees and that sort of thing to some of the other projects around town. It's heartbreaking to see how much land in this state is just clear cut for new factories.
Well, while we're talking about Mayor Dickens, the AJC's Greg Bluestein had a very interesting article about his working relationship with Governor Kemp and the First Lady. During the campaign, Mayor Dickens said he would work to reset city-state relations, and it appears he's doing just that. And Phil, I just want to point out, I mean, it just seems that the state of Georgia works better when the governor and the Atlanta mayor can work together.
Absolutely. And you remember the old Christian gospel hymn, I saw the light? I think Mayor Dickens saw the light, because just several years ago he was for defunding the police, and now he has stepped up. I can't praise him enough on this program. I may be shocking some of my Republican and conservative friends outside of Metro Atlanta, but he deserves praise here, because he has done several things that we've talked about on the show: a police pay raise. I think the fact that he has got a great new chief, I've been commending Chief Shearbaum, and the governor has really stepped up. In fact, the state and the city, to your point, Lori, really worked to get this police training facility. I'm going to throw in Chris Carr, our Attorney General, too.
Farron.
I think the environmentalists, actually, to Melita's point, was a big winner of the training facility, but the mayor did not vote to defund the police. That was a big campaign topic that he addressed. But I agree. When the governor and the mayor work together, we've seen that a lot can get done for the state and the city. And I think it also puts a sort of halt on a lot of divisiveness that could happen if the mayor and the governor are not working together. But I think these two gentlemen, who I know very well, are actually communicating, and their staffs are communicating. And I think that, look, there are going to be times where this relationship will be tested. And so now them building that strong foundation will make sure that when that tough time comes, that they can at least agree to disagree and can continue to communicate.
We know the relations imploded, Martha, between Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms and then Governor Kemp as well.
Well, and in fairness, Mayor Bottoms checked out the last year of her term, and many of the problems we saw today with the communication on the training facility were because she didn't do the groundwork as she should have done as mayor leading up to it. But that's all water under the bridge. I got Mayor Dickens to have a good chuckle, because I asked him, how could a guy that's smart enough to be a chemical engineering graduate from Georgia Tech want to be a public service? One of the smartest men in America if you're a chemical engineer. But he gave a great answer for it. I got him to laugh to start off, and he's doing a great job. And whether it's the Atlanta of my childhood or the Atlanta we're living in today, when the mayor and the governor work together, it's better. And
I mean, this harkens back to the days of former Governor Nathan Deal and Mayor Kasim Reed. I mean, there were New York Times stories written about their great working relationship.
Absolutely. You almost want to see when the choir director is going to come up to the lectern, tap on it, and ask them to join hands and sing Kumbaya. But I also think that it's interesting that the speaker and lieutenant governor are kind of joining in this and kind of putting the kibosh on Buckhead City. I wonder how long it'll take for Bill White to pack some bags.
All right, we'll leave it there. Coming up, the pressure mounts for the Democratic National Committee to pick Atlanta to host its next national convention. We'll discuss after the break.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
This week, several Democratic leaders from the South wrote a letter urging President Biden to pick Atlanta as the host of the next Democratic National Convention. Darren, give us some scoop here. How close are we? Because we know New York and Chicago are also in the running.
Yeah, I think it's getting closer. And I think the one thing that is very interesting is that the DNC is taking their time to really make sure that they look at all the proposals. But I think when you really just look at New York, Chicago, and Atlanta is just so well positioned to host this convention for a number of factors. Number one, we got the world's busiest, most efficient airport, so we can get people in and out safely and quickly. Two, we know how to do conventions. So one of the reasons why we're a good state to do business is because we know how to host good conventions. Thirdly, I think that if you look at the hotels, you know, the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau, William Pate and others have done a really good job of making sure that Atlanta continues to attract this type of convention business. And so if you kind of take the politics out of it, conventions are good, right, for everybody, because it's going to stimulate the economy and it's going to bring a lot of good jobs to people. But we've got to also make the case that we can pay for it, we being Georgia. And I think that's one of the things that I'm hearing that has been resolved. No matter how much this costs, I want to get into the numbers, Georgia, and with the leadership of the mayor, will be able to pull together the resources to make sure that if we are selected for the convention, we can pay for it and it's run smoothly. And I got to also put out the fact, we got MARTA. and we can actually get people around to and from the airport pretty quickly.
Phil, the Democrats in their letter said if the DNC picks Atlanta, it will put Republicans on notice. How do you take that?
I tell you what, bring it on, because I think we ought to have the convention here, because to some of the points you made, Theron, it's good for the economy. But we can now, as Republicans and conservatives, expose the Democratic Party for the lies, the misinformation, the open borders policy, the reckless spending. This will be a big debate if they come here.
Well, it will be an economic boom. Melita, could be as many as 50,000 visitors descending on Atlanta and Georgia.
Well, it'll be great, and I think Atlanta has a lot to be proud of and a lot to showcase, and a rich history with the civil rights movement, and more recently with helping to elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and 2 Democratic senators that gave the Senate the Democratic majority. So the Democrats would be very wise to choose Atlanta.
Martha, doesn't it send the message then that, you know, Georgia is truly a battleground state?
Well, and it is, and a little known fact is I was Kitty Dukakis' driver in 1988. I'm probably the only person that volunteered at that Democratic convention and got to drive her around for a week. It was a but I decided to be a Republican at the end of it. So that's what the result was.
You saw the light.
I saw the light by the end of it. But look, it'll be great. It's going to be, when a big convention, I don't care what the party name is behind it, when a big convention like this comes, it's a great thing. And to Phil's point, it gives us an opportunity to showcase issues and to show compare and contrast, because we are a battleground state. It was 12,000 votes for the presidential. The Senate races were close. It's going to continue to be close. I think we're in kind of a 10-year cycle here, as much as I love it.
All right, well, let's switch to issues under the Gold Dome, because this week, State Representative Joseph Gullett introduced a bill that would allow ranked choice voting at the local level, eliminating runoffs in city elections. Melita, this could be a baby step towards maybe getting away from runoffs statewide in primary and general elections?
Absolutely, and Georgia's one of the few states which still has runoffs. So the cities are a great laboratory for determining if that can work. But my voting friends who are in the legal aspects of that tell me that it really has to have very careful computer programming to make it work and to make it accurate. And so it'll be interesting to see who the vendors are that the cities choose, and how these programs work in the next cycle this year.
Well, and we've already had a little project as far as veterans voting and overseas ballots and that kind of thing. So we've put it on this, you know, we've started working on it. You know, I am for anything that'll get us out of this runoff cycle, and not just because of the money, because we are some of the last states. I think there are vestiges of real voter suppression in the runoff system that we have, and so I think we need to, you know, work towards that.
Theron, do you think it would confuse voters though if we've got city elections with ranked voting and, you know, statewide elections that are not?
Well, we got to go back to who really kind of, I think, escalated this conversation about ranked choice, instant runoffs, and that's with Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who said, all right, the elections are over, Senator Warnock won the runoff. I think we should have a robust conversation in the legislature about what we do with the runoff system. And so the fact that this bill has been introduced, I think now they're having that conversation. There are those that feel like, look, why change a system that's been working, right, for Democrats? Like, we've been winning runoffs statewide. But there are others that say, okay, beyond the cost effects of the runoff, could we actually come up with a sort of a system where people don't have to necessarily go back out a second, or, you know, some cases multiple times to vote? And so I think people are kind of waiting and see, but there are some concerns that Melita pointed out. But ranked choice voting, is it fair? But also, I think the Secretary of State and the legislature have got to explain why we're making this change and the benefits of it. So I'm not sure if it'll get done this session, but it definitely is a conversation that's going to be had.
Phil, would this be a good first step?
Well, I don't think so, and I think we do need to debate it, and I want to see what the benefits are. You've heard me say this before. I don't want to tamper really with the runoff system statewide and for federal elections, but I do want to hold the Libertarians accountable. They're getting a free pass. They should be getting petitions just like any other party. If Theron and I formed a party, we'd have to get thousands and thousands of names to get on the ballot. They don't have to do it. They get 1% or 2%, and they're always on the ballot. So I think there's where the reform is. I don't want to keep Libertarians off the ballot, but I want them to follow the law and get the petitions.
All right, we'll leave it there. Some Georgia senators want to permanently block schools and most state and local government agencies from requiring people to get vaccinated against COVID-19. Now, last year, lawmakers put in a one-year ban, but it expires on June 30th. This new bill would make it permanent. Melita.
Well, I think we need to listen to the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American College of Physicians, who caution against such a ban, because we've already seen how quickly the COVID pandemic developed, and by placing a ban, you don't allow the flexibility to respond to the next disaster when and if it happens. And the one thing about globalization is it will happen.
But I think they're not saying banning the vaccine, they're banning the requiring of the vaccine. You still can go by whether your doctor says you should have the vaccine or not, and that kind of thing. So they're not saying ban the vaccine, they're saying ban the requirement of the vaccine. And I think it ought to be led by your physician, what is best for you. They're already talking about going back to only people that have high risk, that are in high risk groups, that the young people, the risks that were involved with that were a bigger problem. And finally, Johns Hopkins, who's doing the research on this, has finally said that really it didn't prevent COVID, the vaccine. What it did was make the symptoms less severe, so you didn't have hospitalizations and you weren't all of that sort of thing. So, you know, I think the debate needs to be had, but I don't think that it should be a requirement of entry to school.
But Phil, let me ask you this, because if Republicans are all about local control, why not leave it up to the locals?
You know, there's exceptions to every rule. And I think Martha said it perfectly.
But that is exactly it, Lori. Local control. I agree with everything you said.
I'm shocked you've never been for local control.
No, but the Georgia GOP likes to conveniently say local control.
And just to say, they do require other immunizations.
That's true.
Yes. So I just think that, you know, the fact that we're having this conversation is good, but I think the parents need to feel comfortable that if you're going to not require people to be vaccinated when you're putting your kids into school. I mean, I have a 2.5-year-old son who comes home sometimes with a cold and other things, right? So I will feel more comfortable that if the school is using data and following, you know, the local input to make sure.
The parents have to be comfortable the other way too.
Amen. That's what I was just going to say.
Being required to take something that hadn't been completely tested.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
That's right.
I agree with everything you said. The John Hopkins view that you just gave us, right? I agree with that. But you can't leave out the local control element of this and making sure that the school. I agree with the John Hopkins.
You're coming around to local control.
I'm big on local control.
Well, the same forces who want to not have the government require vaccines are still wanting to require women to carry a pregnancy to term.
Oh, I knew we had to go there. All right, coming up, a surprising upset in a North Georgia race to replace the late House Speaker David Ralston. We'll discuss after the break.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
Blue Ridge banker Johnny Chastain beat out the widow of the late House Speaker David Ralston, Cherie Ralston, in the race to fill the vacant seat. Martha, Cherie Ralston had the backing of a lot of high-profile Republicans, including Governor Kemp and former Governor Deal. This was quite an upset.
It was, but at the same time, you can't predict runoffs, okay? Especially small runoffs like this. It all depends on getting your vote out. You know, and I'm just going to say something I don't think anybody has mentioned so far. Cherie Ralston just lost her husband, okay? It may be a blessing that she didn't get this seat, that she's going to be able to process her grief in a less public way. So, you know, as a person who's lost a runoff, okay, sometimes it can be a blessing in disguise. But I don't think that, I didn't hear as much of a buzz of her getting around as much as she probably needed to. And also, there's a big grassroots up there in that area that were really in the Johnny Chastain camp. And it was, what, 500 votes? It could have gone the other way very easily.
Low turnout.
Low turnout.
All right, well, the AJC reports some of the GOP leaders want to bring more oversight to district attorneys, making it easier for voters to recall the prosecutors. Phil, do you think this is necessary?
Absolutely. And I want to praise Representative Houston Gaines. I like his legislation. And what that would do, it would set up something like the Judicial Qualifications Commission. Of course, that's been very effective to remove judges that aren't fulfilling their oath of office or corrupt, etc. And so this needs to be happening with district district attorneys. District attorneys are supposed to uphold their oath of office and prosecute crimes. Who would have thought 10 years ago we would be talking about these rogue left-wing district attorneys like the one in Athens, Clarke County that actually announces that they're not going to prosecute certain crimes. I think it's necessary. I'm glad to see Governor Kemp getting behind this movement, and it's about time we reined in some of these DAs. There's about 4 or 5 around the state, and make them accountable or get rid of them.
Melita, this comes as, we're waiting to see what the Fulton County DA, Fonnie Willis, will do about former President Donald Trump and his aides in terms of election interference. Your thoughts on this?
Well, the DAs they're going after are primarily women of color, including the DA in Athens who is Hispanic. And so it's interesting that it's only since these women have been elected DAs that the Republicans have become so concerned about being able to recall them.
Martha?
I don't think it has anything to do with them being people of color. It has to do with how they're enforcing the law. And people are concerned about violence. I would think that the average voter doesn't know what color their DA is. The average voter doesn't know the name of their DA, okay? What they do want to know is that the streets are safe and that people aren't being let out or having no bail. And what they're seeing is that too many violent criminals are being let out and repeating. So that's why they're doing this, and I don't think that's a change in position.
Darren, isn't there already some oversight of DAs?
Yeah, there's already accountability and oversight for DAs. You know what it's called? Elections, right? And so the people on a local level in counties have an opportunity to vote for the men and women. And some of them, I agree with Melita, happen to be women of color who have been the most outspoken. I mean, Deborah Gonzalez in Athens, Clarke County, where I'm from, is a wonderful DA. Right now, did she do some things that maybe upset some folks? Yeah. But I think that you got to make sure that you hold these DAs accountable, and I think the people need to know what they're doing. But you can't blame the reoccurring door and the criminals who are getting out just on district attorneys. I know you're not just saying that. I think we also have to hold our judges accountable as well, because many of these DAs will go in and try to prosecute these repeat offenders. But if the judge, for whatever reason, decides to let them out, I mean, you can't put that totally on the DA. Now, if they can't have the evidence to keep that person in jail for whatever reason, then that's it. So I think Houston Gaines is a young rock star in the GOP, and it's going to get some traction. But you're going to see DAs really kind of push back. And just remind, I think, state legislators that you have elections, there's already accountability to manage these DAs, and also the Attorney General's office will have a say-so in this as well, because that's why you elect a state Attorney General.
But Theron, why do you have to wait 4 years to try to get someone who's either corrupt or not fulfilling their oath of office? Why can't we have, and you're making the point, we have the Judicial Qualifications Commission that can remove these judges. Why not have it for DAs? And why do we have to wait 4 years for people that are not enforcing the law?
Well, I don't want to speak too soon, but we do have some DAs, particularly we'll remember the Ahmaud Arbery case, right? Where that DA, was inappropriately doing some stuff that ultimately
could have been removed quicker. Could have been removed quicker.
Could have been removed quicker, but she was removed. So there is processes in place, but I think that I'm not saying that you have to wait 4 years. I mean, look, if a DA is corrupt and it's proven, then yeah, let's deal with them. But I think that this is a targeted bill to take away local control. And like I said, there's already accountability. The State Attorney General's office does, have a accountability responsibility to look at these DAs. But I think ultimately, look, voters have to decide. Voters need to be informed of what their district attorneys are doing, because that's why they run for office.
Okay, I don't agree with you, but I hope the bill passes.
And we'll leave it there. Coming up, everyone, winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, Martha, we'll start with you.
Well, I want to just take a big tip of the hat to Scott Slade. He has been the morning guy for 32 years over at WSB, and he did his last show on Friday, and wish him the best in the next chapter. He was one of the really good guys in this business and was always available, helped me. There's a handful of folks that really reached out to me at the beginning of my career and really helped me along, and he was one of those folks, and I appreciate him very much. Good luck, Scott.
He and I used to do a political talk show, but he's stepping down from the morning show. I think there might be a little bit of a future still left.
Well, they never get rid of people all the way. So also I want to just say on this Thursday at the Capitol, Together for Life is going to be a rally that's going to support moms and babies throughout, from conception all the way. The Archdiocese is going to be there, Georgia Baptist, Georgia Life Alliance, all of the social conservative groups are going to be there, and it's going to be a very positive stories of women and doing great things. So we're going to be talking about that, and that'll be Thursday at the Capitol in the South Atrium. And then, of course, it's got to be Mayor Dickens' CEO Thurman and Brian Kemp for, they may have started out communicating this whole thing poorly, but they got it together and we're on the right track now, so they're winners.
Theron.
I want to offer my condolences to the former First Lady of the City of Atlanta, Bunny Jackson Ransom, who unfortunately passed. She was the wife of late Maynard Jackson. Wonderful woman, had a great career in PR, and definitely just very, very stellar. And then also I just want to wish everyone a happy Black History Month. And I'm wearing a Good Trouble t-shirt today because I believe that Good Trouble is a part of our history. It's a part of Black history. It's a reason why I sit here today to be able to be on this public affairs show and to voice my opinion. And I also just want to just push back on any narrative or any comments that are made to attack the legacy of Dr. King, the legacy of Congressman John Lewis, all our civil rights women and men, that really to let them know that they need to really take some time to understand the true meaning of nonviolent protests and to make sure that the comments that are made that are against it are irresponsible and incorrect.
Well, that sounds good. In fact, could Good Trouble be when conservatives march nonviolently?
I'll march with you.
All right, good.
Nonviolent. I'll get you a sweatshirt.
That's a winner. I'll have to change a little bit of the wording, but anyhow, I got just a loser, and I don't understand why the U.S. Attorney for Georgia and the FBI don't jump in on terrorism charges. You know, when we had the Asian hate crime, it actually didn't turn out to be an Asian hate crime. It was some religious nut who killed those people. But where are they? How come the state has to do this? I want the Biden administration who appoints the U.S. Attorney. This is terrorism, what went on at the police training facility site.
Melita.
Douglas County School Superintendent Trent Lott is the State Superintendent of the Year, and he's one of 4 finalists for the national honor to be awarded later this month, so I want to wish him well. Georgia pecan growers are a winner because India is reducing tariffs for their product by 70%, and both of our senators worked on that. And then Friday's announcement that Microsoft will pause development on a 90-acre campus on the west side is a loss for the city of Atlanta.
We'll leave it there.